I didn't plan to come. The invitation was polite, printed on ivory cardstock with gold foil edges like it was trying to impress someone. I tossed it on the counter and forgot about it until Uncle Gerald called. "You don't have to stay long, Danny," he said, voice gravelly with age and something else, concern maybe. "Just stop by. For me." So, I did. That's how I ended up in a high-ceilinged banquet hall along the river, with glass walls, white linen tablecloths, and a family that still hadn't figured out how to make eye contact with me. I sat at the farthest end of the table, the seat next to the coat rack, like I was someone's awkward +1. I wore what I always wore when I had to blend in: button-down shirt, clean jeans, and shoes that had seen better days. No one greeted me. My sister, Sabrina, caught sight of me mid-sip and immediately leaned toward Liam, her fiancé. I didn't hear what she said, but he laughed. Loudly. Too loudly. Like he wanted me to hear. "He's still a barista, right?" Liam smirked, not even pretending to whisper. Didn't realize this reunion came with table service. I glanced down at the water glass in front of me. My name card said Daniel. Just Daniel. Everyone else had Dr., Miss S., or Founder before theirs. Titles handed down or self-appointed. Mine? Earned through espresso shots and early shifts. I've never been ashamed of what I do. Pouring coffee for half-asleep city lawyers and stressed-out parents isn't glamorous, but it's honest. I meet people where they are, not where they pretend to be. Sabrina tilted her head, the way she always did when preparing for a performance. "Why'd you even come, Daniel? Don't you work weekends?" Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness, like it was meant to make the insult sound less like a slap. I looked at her, at the perfect makeup, the off-shoulder dress worth more than my rent, and I said, Gerald asked me, "Our mother, Eliza," shifted in her chair like she was embarrassed to hear my name spoken out loud. She fussed with her silverware. "You shouldn't have," she muttered, barely moving her lips. "This is for family. I am family," I replied quietly. No one argued. No one agreed. Silence spread down the table like spilled wine. Liam broke it. "You're kind of like the family mascot, huh? Keeps things light." They laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make my ears burn. I stared at my untouched plate, cut into the chicken. My hands didn't shake, but I could feel the heat in my chest. Slow and bitter. And just as I was about to excuse myself, go home, and forget this night like all the others, the sound of tires on gravel changed everything. It started with silence. Not the kind that creeps in slowly. This one was sudden, total, a collective breath held hostage. Heads turned toward the entrance. Forks paused midair. Even the server setting down wine froze. Through the tall glass of the banquet hall doors, a car rolled into view. Not just any car. A midnight blue Aston Martin DBX 707, sleek and unapologetic in the late afternoon sun. The valet nearly tripped over himself trying to open the door. From the driver's seat stepped Emily Hart. She wore a custom-tailored navy pantsuit that made her look like she was walking out of a Fortune magazine cover or into a boardroom to end someone's career. Not an ounce of arrogance, just that rare stillness of someone who knows exactly who she is. She walked through the double doors like she'd been here 100 times, confident, calm, and with a faint smile on her lips. Her eyes scanned the long table, skipping past the stunned stares and tightly clutched pearls until they landed on me. And then she said it. Daniel. My name, soft but clear, pulled the breath out of my chest. Her voice grounded me. It always did. Everyone turned to look at me like they were seeing a ghost. I stood, slowly, not dramatic, just enough to meet her halfway. "Sorry I'm late," she said, walking up to me. Traffic was murder. Then she reached for my hand and kissed it. Not some over-the-top act, just a quiet, warm gesture. The kind that says, "I see you," without needing to say anything else. Aunt Bernice gasped like she'd seen a scandal unfold. Liam blinked like someone had unplugged his brain. Who? Sabrina started, but her voice faltered. I turned to her. She's my wife. You could practically hear jaws hitting the floor. And just like that, the table, the whole room, cracked open. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her presence alone rewrote the energy of the space. She turned to the room and offered a polite smile. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said, though we both knew she had. Daniel, want to get out of here? I glanced around. At the people who spent the last hour making me feel invisible. At the mother who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. At Sabrina, who suddenly had nothing clever to say. I'm done here, I replied. I grabbed my coat, straightened my spine. For once, the weight wasn't on me. But then, before we could take a single step, Uncle Gerald stood. Wait, he said. The room froze again. Uncle Gerald didn't raise his voice. He never had to. Even when we were kids, Sabrina screaming about some injustice. Me quietly hiding bruises that weren't physical. He could silence an entire room with a look, a pause, a word. And now, at 73 that hadn't changed, he stepped around the table slowly, gripping his cane, moving like every step mattered. He didn't look at anyone, not Eliza, not Sabrina, not Liam. His eyes were locked on me and Emily. I suppose now, he said, would be a good time for all of you to ask who this woman is. No one responded. Maybe they were still in shock. Maybe they knew better than to speak. Gerald's voice stayed even, the same tone he'd used discussing football or tax law. You want to know how Daniel, whom you all love to reduce to some kind of coffee-fetching mascot, ended up married to a woman who makes more in a day than most of you will in a decade? His gaze flicked toward Eliza, then landed squarely on Sabrina. She didn't tell you because she didn't want your validation, he said. She didn't want to trade authenticity for acceptance. He nodded toward Emily, who stood beside me with quiet dignity, her fingers wrapped around mine like a silent anchor. She married someone who sees her for who she is, not who she's supposed to be in your world of polished masks and silent hierarchies. I knew, he added, almost like an afterthought. I've known all along, and I respected her choice to stay quiet, because I understood. The murmurs started again, soft, rapid-fire whispers between cousins, aunts, and in-laws. But Gerald didn't flinch. He kept going. You all think this is some twist? Some punchline? That the barista found a billionaire wife and that somehow makes him more worthy? You've missed the entire point. Liam leaned back, muttering. This is ridiculous. She's probably not even. Emily stepped forward. I'm Emily Hart, she said, calm as ever. CEO of Hart Systems. You might know the name. And they did. You could tell from the way Sabrina's eyes widened just slightly, from how Eliza's mouth tightened until her lips disappeared. Even Bernice, queen of condescension, couldn't fake indifference now. Sabrina scoffed. This is insane. She's just doing this to what? Emily said, tilting her head slightly. Humor him? Give him a pity marriage? Her voice stayed level, but something steely underlined it now. The same tone I'd heard in boardrooms when she calmly dismantled a hostile investor without breaking eye contact. I met Daniel during one of the worst nights of my life, she continued. A panic attack, alone in a diner. No one else noticed or cared. He did. He didn't ask for anything, didn't know my name, just stayed. I swallowed, the memory sharp and warm. That night was never meant to mean anything to anyone but us. He sat across from me, Emily said, softer now. Poured coffee, talked me down. 22 minutes of silence and breathing. I left him a note and a $500 stip. Didn't expect to see him again, but I did. I came back. She looked at me then, not performative, not for effect. Just a glance that said I remember it all. Daniel didn't fall in love with my bank account, she said. He didn't care who I was. He still doesn't. That's why I married him. Silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Then, from the far end of the table, my mother finally spoke. "Eliza," Gerald said, looking at her. "Do you have anything to say?" She stood, slowly, still elegant, still composed. A woman raised to value appearances over people. She adjusted her necklace, cleared her throat. "I didn't know," she said. "That much is clear," Emily replied, with a nod that wasn't unkind, just factual. "I," Eliza began, then paused. "You could have told us, Daniel." "And if I had?" I asked. She said nothing. I didn't push. Didn't need to. Because the answer was right there. In the way she looked at me now. Not with pride, but confusion. Like she couldn't reconcile me with the life I'd quietly built. Like I'd betrayed her by thriving without her blessing. Sabrina stepped forward next, her voice cutting. "So what? You're rich now? You married into money? And suddenly you're above all of us?" I blinked at her. "No," I said simply. "I'm just finally done pretending I need to earn space at this table." And it was true. For years, I'd let their words cling to me like lint. Little reminders that I was never enough, not ambitious enough, not polished enough, not enough of a man in the ways they measured value. But standing next to Emily, being seen through her eyes, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I didn't have to audition for a family that never wanted me to pass. Uncle Gerald tapped his cane against the floor. "Well," he said, "I suppose this reunion turned out more revealing than expected." He smiled, just slightly, and it felt like a blessing. "I think we're done here," Emily whispered to me. "Unless you want to stay?" I shook my head. Eliza called my name as I turned. Not angrily, not kindly, just uncertain. "Daniel." I turned back. "I never stopped being your son," I said. "Even when you stopped acting like my mother." She flinched. Just a little. I didn't wait for a reply. I took Emily's hand, and we walked out. The door of the banquet hall closed behind us with a soft click, not a slam, just an ending. But as we reached the car, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Just done. 3 days passed. No calls from Sabrina, no texts from Liam, no surprise pop-ins from Eliza. It was blissfully, eerily quiet. I spent most of those days doing what I always did when I needed to feel like myself, making pour-overs in my tiny kitchen, alphabetizing our record collection, reorganizing the books in our home library, until Emily noticed and pulled me away with one of those calm smiles that said, "You don't need to keep fixing things to feel okay." But of course, silence only lasts so long. The first message came from my mother, a voicemail. Her voice was clipped, tight in that overly polite way people sound when they're trying kindness on for size. "Daniel, sweetheart. Well, we were all just surprised, is all. Maybe we could talk? Just a casual dinner. Bring Emily. It'd be nice." She paused. Then, as if remembering who she was, added, "Anyway, let me know." I didn't. The next day, Sabrina sent a text. "That night got weird, huh? I think things were said in the heat of the moment. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." No apology, just a casual rewrite of reality. Classic. But the message that actually made me stop wasn't electronic. It was hand-delivered, sealed in a plain white envelope. The handwriting unmistakably shaky. Uncle Gerald. I opened it while Emily was in a meeting. "Daniel, if I were 30 years younger and a touch less arthritic, I'd have stood on that damn table and told them off louder. Instead, I used what I had left in me and hoped you'd hear the weight behind the words. You did well, son. Not because you married up, they'll never understand how foolish that phrase is, but because you stood tall without needing their permission to breathe." What happened at the reunion? I was ashamed. Not of you, never of you, but of them. For what they couldn't see, for what they chose not to. You've built something they can't fathom. Not just a life, but peace. That's the rarest currency there is. If you have time, lunch this weekend, Same cafe, same booth. Love. Gerald the first read it twice, then once more. I didn't cry, but I felt it. Later that night, Emily found me in the kitchen, holding the letter against my chest like a shield. She didn't ask what it said. She just wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "Go. He's waiting." And I did. The cafe hadn't changed in years. Still the mismatched mugs, still the faint smell of cinnamon and old books, still Gerald in his booth by the window, wearing a navy cardigan that made him look both academic and soft. He stood, arms open. My boy. We hugged. Longer than necessary. Longer than I'd ever admit felt good. Emily came too, polite, gentle, letting him speak first. He asked about our trip to Denmark, about her latest keynote in DC, about the last book I read. We didn't speak of the reunion at first. He let the space warm before stepping into it. But eventually his eyes turned thoughtful. "Eliza wants to talk to you." I froze. "She's not sure how," Gerald continued. "But she's trying." I stared at the foam swirling in my coffee. Is she trying because of who I married, or because she regrets who she was? Gerald didn't answer. He didn't need to. I nodded slowly. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired of proving I matter." "Then stop," he said, simply. "You don't owe them anything." That night, when we got home, I found a message in my inbox from Eliza. Not a voicemail, not a text. An email. It read, "Daniel, I watched the interview. I saw the way Emily speaks about you, with pride, with love. I saw something else too, how calm you've become, how certain, and how much of that wasn't new. I just didn't notice it before. I was wrong, not just in how I treated you, but in what I valued. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet, but I'd like a chance to try. Just us. No dinners, no shows. Just mother and son. If you'll let me." Eliza the first stared at the screen longer than I should have. Emily came in, sat beside me, and read it over my shoulder. "Well," she asked gently, I think." I paused. "I think I want to meet her. Just once. No performances. Just to see if something real is possible." We met the next day, at the Botanical Conservatory by the lakeside, a place Eliza used to take me as a kid when she didn't have anywhere else to put me. The glass dome shimmered in the sun. Inside, orchids bloomed in quiet corners, and koi fish swam in lazy circles. She was already there when I arrived, standing by the lily pond, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown. She turned. "Daniel," the first nodded. "Thanks for coming. I should be the one saying that," she said, her voice trembling slightly. We sat on a bench. Birds chirped. Wind rustled the glass panes above us. The world didn't pause, but we did. "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "Don't start with excuses." She nodded, eyes down. "Then I'll start with thank you. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't perfect, but it was human." We sat in silence for a while, letting the stillness say what words couldn't. Eventually, she asked, "Can I ask about her? Emily?" I smiled. "She's kind. She listens. She's never once made me feel like I had to change to be loved." Eliza blinked fast. "I envy that." I didn't answer, because I knew. For the first time, I wasn't the boy chasing her approval. I was a man building something without it. We weren't fixed. Not even close. But for the first time in years, I left a conversation with my mother feeling like I hadn't bled for it. The following week, I stood behind the counter at the cafe again. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. It was early. Soft jazz played over the speakers. The air smelled like espresso and cinnamon, and someone had just overfilled the pastry case again. I fixed it without complaint. There was something grounding about this place. It had been my haven before anyone knew who I married. Before I was suddenly the man who made it, as if I had signed some invisible contract with success. People think the start of your life is when everything gets better. Money, fame, status, as if validation is some kind of holy baptism. but I'd been building a life long before they noticed. This cafe, it was part of that? Daniel? A voice said softly from the doorway. I turned. Sabrina. Alone. No Liam, no camera-ready facade. Just her. Jeans, oversized sweater, hair tied back like she hadn't slept. She was holding supermarket flowers, the kind that wilt in 3 days but still say I tried. She walked up to the counter, shifting awkwardly. I didn't know you were working today, she said. I didn't reply, just watched. I came to say I'm sorry. My eyebrows lifted, not sarcastic, just surprised. For what I said, she continued. For how I treated you. I didn't think I needed to explain myself before, but I see now. I was cruel. Worse, I thought I was funny. She let out a breath. I was jealous, she added. Not of your money, of your peace. You looked free, and I didn't understand that. Her voice cracked slightly. You didn't change, Daniel, and you still ended up better than all of us. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just stood there, watching her twist the flower stems between her fingers. Thanks, I said quietly. She nodded, like she knew that was all she'd get, and maybe all she deserved. Then she left the flowers on the counter and walked out. I didn't stop her, but I didn't resent her either. We weren't healed, but something had shifted. Outside, Emily was waiting for me. She leaned against the car, sunglasses perched on her head, flipping through a book. She always waited with that calm stillness, the kind that reminded me not everything needed to be rushed. Ready? She asked. Not yet, I said, smiling. 1 more minute. I stepped back inside and looked around. The chipped countertop, the scuffed tiles, the exact booth where I first met her 2 years ago, in the middle of a storm, her coat soaked, her eyes distant, her breath too shallow to fake calm. I'd seen something in her that night, something fragile and rare. She thought I helped her, but the truth is, she gave me something too, a beginning. And now, this place, this life, this us, it was no longer something I had to defend. They could whisper, they could spin their own versions, but they would never define me again. Later that evening, I sat on the floor of our living room with a glass of wine, flipping through a box of old postcards, ones Gerald had sent me when I was younger. One had a photo of Lake Como on it. On the back, in scratchy cursive, it read, Where peace lives, pride dies. Choose wisely. Emily sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, smiling faintly, just rereading the map that led me here. She wrapped her arm around me and whispered, You've always known the way. I believed her, because I remembered who I was before they saw the suits, the headlines, the spotlight. I was the man in the apron. I was the boy who didn't speak up at family dinners. I was the invisible son who grew in silence. And somehow, through all of it, I stayed kind. I stayed grounded. I stayed me. A few nights later, I met Gerald again. Same cafe, same booth. He slid a manila envelope across the table with a small smirk. What's this? I asked. Just a little something I forgot to give you. Legal stuff. You know, paperwork. I opened it and froze. Inside was a trust document. He'd rewritten his will. You're listed as co-trustee, he said, and beneficiary. I'm not leaving much, but what I do have, I want you to manage. You get people, Daniel. Not everyone does. I blinked. I don't want your money, I said. I know, he replied. That's why I trust you with it. On the drive home, I told Emily about it. She didn't react like people expect a billionaire to react when they hear about an inheritance. Instead, she reached across the console, took my hand, and said, You're not a story they get to rewrite. I looked at her, then back at the road. I'm not comic relief anymore, I said. She smiled. You never were. A month later, we flew to Portugal. It was quiet there, a rented stone house by the coast, with vines crawling up the sides and a balcony that looked over the sea. We read, walked barefoot, and made pasta from scratch. She kissed my forehead while I stood at the sink. I traced her collarbone while she recited her favorite poem. There was no phone buzz, no whispers, no history chasing us down, just salt air, clean linens, and laughter that didn't need to be polite. On the last morning, as I stood by the window watching the sun rise over the Atlantic, she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I turned to face her. That I didn't have to become someone else to be loved. She leaned in, forehead resting against mine. "And you never will." Story 2. I'm 21 now, in my third year at a public university in Oregon, studying digital illustration and animation. Life was starting to feel like it was moving forward. I had my own little apartment, a quiet neighborhood, and a part-time job at a local bookstore. Things were far from perfect but manageable. That is, until my brother decided to make me his personal project. For context, my older brother, Mason, is 29 and a software engineer. Think of your classic tech bro who thinks Mr. Robot is a documentary. He's sharp, annoyingly competent, and thinks everyone else is a few IQ points beneath him. We've never been particularly close. Our personalities are oil and water, but we kept the peace for the family's sake. I was the artsy dreamer. He was the no-nonsense coder. He never missed a chance to jab at my useless major or ask when I'd grow out of my sketchbook phase. Our conversations were routine check-ins every few weeks, usually with him inserting unwanted career advice. But 2 weeks ago, he made an offhand remark during a video call. He joked about a drawing I'd just finished that hadn't been uploaded, shared, or even backed up. That piece existed only on my laptop, saved locally. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. I laughed it off at the time. Maybe he saw it over my shoulder on a past visit? But later that night, the paranoia crept in. I started thinking about another conversation, one where he mentioned a Discord chat I'd had in private with a friend. That had definitely never been public. Out of caution, I checked my Gmail, my bank app, even my school portal. Activity logs showed someone logging in from an unknown device, consistently, for over a week. That's when I knew. I called him immediately, half angry, half scared. I asked if he'd been accessing my stuff. He didn't even deny it. He laughed, actually laughed. Then, in his usual smug tone, said, "I've had remote access to your system for a while now. Just keeping an eye on things. Think of it as digital mentorship." I couldn't even respond at first. He went on about how privacy was a myth, and that it was my fault for having such low security standards. Then he slipped in that he knew my class schedule, down to the minute, and had helpfully reminded me of one the other day. I hung up. I felt sick, angry, violated. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to my university's tech support, but they could only help so much. I ran a bunch of scans. Nothing showed up. My system seemed clean, until I realized a clean system doesn't mean a clean apartment. He had stayed with me for 2 weeks the month prior while between apartments. I didn't think much of it at the time. He mostly stayed glued to his laptop, ordering food and working late into the night. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling. I searched my place top to bottom, found nothing. Still, I couldn't shake it. I stopped using my laptop, started doing everything from the university library. And even then, every time my phone buzzed, I panicked. Then, while cleaning my bathroom a few nights later, just wiping down shelves, I noticed a small object tucked behind a vent. At first glance, I thought it was a piece of plastic. Then I realized what it was. A micro camera. It was positioned to face the shower. I sat on the floor and cried for hours. There's no way to describe the kind of rage and shame that hits you when you realize your own sibling has been watching you. Not metaphorically, literally. I didn't hesitate after that. I went straight to the police. I brought the camera, screenshots of the remote logins, text messages where he casually referenced things he should have had no knowledge of. They believed me. Quickly. I filed for a restraining order that same day. When it was served, things unraveled fast. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, then watched your support system collapse right after, you already know how the next part goes. After I filed the restraining order against Mason and turned over the evidence to the police, it didn't take long for things to get worse. My parents found out within a day. I didn't tell them. He did. I don't know how he spun it, but within 24 hours, my mom was calling me nonstop, crying into my voicemail about destroying the family. My dad's messages weren't as emotional, just furious. Accusations. You're lying. He'd never do something like that. You're trying to ruin his life. I stopped listening after the fifth one. Eventually, I turned off my phone altogether. The next week was a blur. Mason had already violated the restraining order, left me messages, all with that same smug tone he always used when he thought he was untouchable. They weren't outright threats, but close enough that the cops took them seriously. He was arrested again. That's when my parents really lost it. They disowned me. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm not exaggerating. My mom sent me a long, guilt-laced email about how I'd broken the family apart. My dad went one step further. He filmed himself, and my mother burning every document of mine they still had. Childhood stuff, legal papers, even old sketchbooks I'd left in my room. That video broke me. They didn't just turn their backs on me. They lit the bridge on fire and danced on the ashes. They told me I was no longer welcome at home, that I should figure out life on my own since I was so independent now. It was winter break. Campus was closed. I had nowhere to go except my apartment, which I no longer felt safe in, and the back room of the bookstore where I worked. I bought a new laptop. Couldn't trust the old one anymore, even after wiping it. I barely left the house, barely ate, cried until I couldn't feel anything, and the silence was loud. No one from the family reached out, not even a cousin. I was alone. At some point, I stopped going to classes. Depression doesn't feel dramatic when it happens. It's slow, quiet. Like being buried in snow, you don't feel the cold until your skin goes numb. I tried to keep working at the bookstore, but I wasn't myself. I was making mistakes, zoning out. I'd go entire shifts without saying more than a few words to anyone. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to get my identity documents replaced, report my parents for withholding them, but that required energy I didn't have. And besides, I was scared. Not of violence, my parents weren't like that, but of them erasing me even more, of them calling the police first and spinning a different version of the story. When I finally got the courage to ask my dad for a photo of my birth certificate and SSN just to try to get replacements, he told me he burned those too. Or maybe he just wanted me to believe he had. I called his pastor, hoping maybe someone in his religious circle would talk some sense into him. That went nowhere. So I was stuck. No passport, no SSN card. Nothing but a school ID and a learner's permit, useless for getting a new job. Every attempt to rebuild my life hit a wall. And every time I checked my email or voicemail, I was reminded that the people who raised me were rooting for my failure. And still, despite all that, I questioned myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I could have handled things differently. But then I'd remember the camera, the remote access, the feeling of Mason watching me without my knowledge or consent. And I'd get angry all over again. What kind of brother does that? What kind of parents defend it? The last 5 months of that year were the hardest of my life. People talk about rock bottom, like it's this clear moment you hit it, then climb up. That's not what happened for me. My bottom was just a slow, quiet fall. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. Other days I did what I had to, just not much more. Mason's case dragged on. It turns out, even with a camera in your sister's bathroom, if you're smart and well-connected, the legal system doesn't rush. He ended up with a misdemeanor charge and probation. That was it. No jail time. He lost his job, but landed another 1 month later, thanks to a friend of a friend. Meanwhile, I was too scared to open my email, because every week or two, someone from my parents' circle would message me from a blocked number. sometimes just breathing, sometimes calling me names. I changed numbers twice. Didn't matter. They always found a way. I gave up on trying to go back to school. My depression was too bad. I had no support system left. Friends slowly faded away. I don't blame them. People don't know what to say when trauma drips instead of explodes. But life didn't stay still. Even when you feel frozen, time moves. And then, I heard from an old friend of my brother's. It wasn't someone I was close to, just an acquaintance. They sent me a message that started with, "I don't know if you've heard, but..." That's how I found out Mason had cancer. Stage 4, diagnosed late. Nothing to be done. By the time I heard about it, he was already in hospice. I never saw him, never reached out, and he never tried to reach me either. A few weeks later, he was gone. And you know what? I didn't feel sad. I felt light. For the first time in nearly a year, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I felt guilty about that at first. Like maybe I was a monster for feeling relief instead of grief. But here's the truth. I'd already lost my brother a long time ago. Not when he died. Not when he hacked my life. Not even when he installed that camera. No, I lost him slowly every time he laughed at me instead of supporting me. Every time he treated me like a problem to fix. Every time he crossed a line and called it helping. So no, I didn't cry when he died. I just kept living. My parents reached out twice after that. Once through email. Once through a distant cousin. Both times with the same message. "We're alone now. We want to talk." I didn't respond. I don't owe them anything. They didn't believe me when I needed them most. They threw away my things, my name, and then came back only when Mason was gone and they had no one left. I have moved to another state now. It's quieter, safer. My apartment's tiny but warm, and I like the stillness. I've got a decent job, one that pays the bills and gives me time to draw again. I'm not back in school yet. Maybe I won't go back. That part doesn't feel so important anymore. What matters is that I'm no longer scared of my own home. I'm sleeping better. I'm eating again. I've started making friends. Slowly. Real ones. People who knew what happened and didn't run from it. I'm even looking into therapy. Something I never thought I'd do. For the first time, I feel like I own my life. I still have nightmares sometimes. About being watched. About being erased. But they come less often now. And when they do, I remind myself that I survived. I chose truth over silence. I chose myself, even when no one else did. Mason's gone. My parents are ghosts. And me? I'm still here, still breathing, still drawing, still healing. Story 3. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd cut off my own family. But here we are. I'm Alyssa, 25, and I've been married to my husband, let's call him Noah, 28 for almost 2 years now. This isn't your typical family drama. It's messier. We're talking betrayal, naked photos, and a golden child sister who never grew out of high school level obsession. My older sister, we'll call her Lena, 27. Picture the golden girl. She was everyone's favorite, especially our mom's. Straight A student, the responsible one, popular, charming. I was the quiet one in her shadow. That dynamic never really bothered me growing up. She was like a second mom to me, warm, protective, generous with her attention. Or so I thought. Noah and I met during my first year at college. I was 20. He was 23. He wasn't just attractive, he was one of those guys who seemed to be good at everything. Athletic, smart, charming. Naturally, I crushed on him hard. But there was a catch. Lena was also at the same university, and she was tight with the same friend group as Noah. She was already a senior by then, and had sort of taken me under her wing socially, introducing me to everyone including him. Because of that, I never made a move. I didn't want to risk awkwardness or step on toes. She meant too much to me. Eventually, though, Noah and I started getting close. He and Lena never seemed to talk much, which felt odd considering how close she was with everyone else. I noticed, but I didn't read into it. Still, I confessed to Lena one night that I liked him. Her reaction? a sympathetic nod, and a warning not to get my hopes up because he wasn't looking for a relationship. It crushed me. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? So I backed off until my 20 honest birthday, when Noah flipped everything. He told me he liked me, had for a while, and asked me out. I was shocked, but thrilled. We started dating. I was on cloud nine. Lena congratulated me when I told her. She hugged me, told me she was happy for me. I should have noticed then something in her eyes didn't match her smile. We moved in together after college, and things were going great, except Lena started pulling away. She was still living at home with our parents. Our culture doesn't encourage daughters moving out before marriage, so I still saw her often, but she was distant. Her replies were short, her energy cold. I tried confronting her once. She brushed it off, said she was just going through stuff with her boyfriend, Jason. They'd been together since high school. He worked for his dad's construction business. Solid guy, from what I'd seen. When Jason finally saved enough for a house, he proposed. Lena said yes. Everyone was over the moon. And not long after, Noah proposed to me. I thought we'd celebrate together, two sisters engaged, ready to build beautiful futures. But that's when the cracks turned into canyons. I sat my family down and told them the news. Lena burst into tears. My first thought? She's happy for me. Wrong. My mom pulled her aside immediately. My dad stayed behind, awkwardly patting my hand and saying something about Lena having a tough time. That was the first time it hit me that maybe those tears weren't joy. Still, I let it go. Tried to be understanding. Until Noah showed me the texts. Lena had been messaging him a lot. Late night calls, flirty comments, pictures in tight dresses with questions like, "Which one looks best on me?" I saw everything. He'd ignored them, kept things dry, formal. If I wasn't heartbroken, I'd have laughed at how awkwardly robotic his responses were. But I wasn't laughing. I was devastated. When I confronted her, I expected, I don't know, maybe shame? An apology? Nope. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You stole him from me." It took me a second to process. She believed she was entitled to him, like he was her backup plan, and I ruined it. And when my own mother, sided with her, I realized how deep the favoritism really ran. I packed a bag and left that night. My dad tried stopping me, told me it was inappropriate for an unmarried woman to live with her fiancé. My mom? She called me names I won't repeat, said I was ruining the family, that I was a disgrace. But I left anyway. I chose peace. I chose Noah. We got married a few months later. A small, beautiful ceremony. Only a few of my relatives came, none of the immediate family. But I didn't cry. I didn't dwell. I just built a new life. Or so I thought. Because a week ago, Lena came back with one last shot to ruin everything. A week ago, Noah came into the living room with a weird look on his face. You know when someone wants to tell you something but isn't sure how? That look. Phone in hand. Like he didn't know whether to show me or just delete it and spare me the stress. I asked what was up, and that's when he handed me his phone. Lena had messaged him on Instagram. It was in his message requests, so he hadn't seen it right away. But the timestamp? It was from the same week as her wedding. She got married. She married Jason, and then she messaged my husband with a confession. Again. This time, it wasn't flirty banter or pictures in dresses. It was a full, unemotional declaration. A what-if kind of message. She told Noah she still thought about him, that she always believed they were meant to be, that if he gave her a chance, she'd make him happier than I ever could. Oh, and she included photos again. Not dresses this time. You get the picture. I felt like I'd been slapped in the face all over again. I thought I'd buried all the hurt back when we moved out and got married, but apparently the past wasn't done with me yet. Noah blocked her immediately, took screenshots, even screen recorded everything just in case. Then he looked at me and asked, "Do you want me to send this to Jason?" I didn't know what to say. My gut reaction was no, not because I wanted to protect Lena. She'd made her bed, and honestly, I didn't care if she drowned in it, but I didn't want to deal with the explosion that would follow. The screaming, the showing up at my house, the guilt-tripping texts from my mom. But then the guilt started creeping in. Jason deserves to know. He's a good guy, quiet, kind, devoted. He spent years working his tail off to give Lena a stable life. And now, just days after their wedding, she's out here chasing a man who already rejected her multiple times. I still didn't say anything, but I told Noah I wouldn't stop him if he felt it was the right thing to do. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept spinning in circles. What if this blows up in our faces? What if Lena twists it all around and plays victim? What if my mom shows up at our house again, dragging Lena behind her, crying and wailing about betrayal? I didn't want chaos. I wanted peace. But peace doesn't last when you're dealing with people who don't respect boundaries. A few days went by, quiet ones. Too quiet, honestly. Then Noah told me he'd sent the screenshots to Jason. I didn't ask when. I didn't even ask why he didn't tell me first. Deep down, I think I knew he would do it. He's not the kind of man who lets people get away with things like that. Not when it involves deception and someone else's life. He told me Jason hadn't responded. At least, not yet. Then last night, Noah got a call. Jason. They talked for a while. I didn't listen in. I just sat in the bedroom, staring at the wall like a ghost. When Noah finally came in, he looked drained. Jason confronted her, he said. She tried to lie, said I was the one coming on to her. Of course she did. Apparently it turned into a full-blown fight. She packed a bag and ran straight back to my parents' house. When I heard that, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Because even when you do the right thing, it still hurts. There's no victory in watching someone unravel their own life. There's just sadness and a deep, gnawing disappointment. I ended up sending the screenshots to my dad, not my mom. I still couldn't bring myself to speak to her. Probably never will. She's always had a way of making me feel like the villain, no matter what I do. My dad replied with a short text. We'll handle it. We won't tell anyone. That stung more than I expected. Even now, after everything Lena did not just to me, but to Jason, he was still trying to protect her reputation. Keep things quiet. Preserve the image of our picture-perfect family, even if the inside was rotting. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't say, you were right. He didn't even ask how I was doing. Just silence. Just cover up. That's when it finally clicked. I don't owe these people anything anymore. We're getting cameras installed next week. I'm not taking chances. If Lena or my mom decides to come knocking, I want everything on record. I'm not doing the whole maybe they've changed routine anymore. Noah's parents are taking us out for dinner this weekend. They've been nothing but kind to me, always treating me like family even when my own didn't. They don't push, don't meddle, don't guilt trip. They just show up with love and warm food. It's funny. Growing up, I thought family meant blood, that no matter what happened, you had to stick it out, forgive, move on. But I've learned that real family is who shows up when things fall apart. Real family doesn't ask you to sacrifice your peace for someone else's drama, and they sure as hell don't make excuses for betrayal. After all that, after everything, I figured that was the end of it. Lena was back with our parents. Jason had the truth. Noah and I had our peace, or at least something close to it. And me, I thought I could finally exhale. But peace is a tricky thing when it's built on the edge of someone else's chaos. You start second-guessing yourself, wondering if the storm's really passed, or if it's just circling, waiting for you to let your guard down. I didn't say anything to the rest of my extended family. Most of them still think I'm the problem child, the dramatic one, the ungrateful daughter who ran off to play house with her boyfriend instead of staying home where she belonged. But I didn't leave for rebellion. I left for survival. The weight of being the second choice, the invisible one, was something I carried my whole life. I didn't even realize how heavy it was until I finally put it down. Noah's been my anchor through all this. He's calm in ways I've never been, level-headed. honest to a fault. A few nights after the call with Jason, we were lying in bed when he turned to me and said, "I know it hurts. I wish I could take it from you." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at the ceiling, blinking back that kind of quiet, aching sadness that doesn't need tears to be real. "It's not just what she did," I said finally. "It's who she was to me, or who I thought she was. That's the part that still messes me up. I didn't just lose a sister, I lost a version of my life that felt safe. Growing up, Lena was everything. I didn't just love her, I admired her, trusted her. She'd do my hair for school pictures. She'd sneak snacks into my backpack when I forgot lunch. She'd hold my hand during dentist appointments. So when she started pulling away when she turned cold, after Noah and I got together, I didn't know how to handle it. I blamed myself. Thought maybe I'd done something wrong. Thought maybe if I just gave her space, things would go back to how they used to be. But the truth is, sometimes people show you who they are when they don't get what they want. And that version of Lena, I didn't recognize her at all. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after a break like this. Not the kind where things are settled, but the kind where everything just stops. The phone doesn't ring. The texts don't come. No invitations. No check-ins. And at first, it hurt. Every holiday, every family birthday I didn't get invited to. It stung, like I was mourning people who were still alive. But lately, I've started to feel something else. Relief. Because now, I don't have to perform. I don't have to pretend everything's fine while sitting across from people who never saw me to begin with. I don't have to shrink myself to make room for Lena's spotlight. I just get to be me. Noah and I got a little place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a small porch, enough space for peace. We have quiet mornings with coffee and late dinners with music. We read books, grow herbs in mismatched pots, argue about movies, laugh about old college stories. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And that means everything to me. I still think about Jason sometimes. I haven't heard anything from him directly since that night he called Noah. Just silence. But I hope he's okay. He didn't deserve this. He was just another person Lena used to fill the gap between who she was and who she pretended to be. A mutual cousin reached out a few days ago, said they heard something about Jason moving out. Apparently Lena's back at our parents' house full-time now. No updates on whether she and Jason are trying to fix things or if he's finally done. Honestly, I hope he's done. Because you can't build a real future with someone who's still stuck in the past, especially when that past is built on lies. My dad texted me the other day. Just a simple, "Hope you're doing well." No apology, no follow-up. I read it twice, didn't reply. Not because I'm angry, but because I don't want to be dragged back into the space where I'm constantly trying to earn basic decency. I'm done making excuses for people who never protected me. I know he probably meant well. I know deep down, he's caught in the middle of loyalty and logic. But being neutral when someone's hurting you isn't love. It's cowardice. And I'm not interested in playing that game anymore. Last weekend, Noah and I visited his parents. They made us dinner, grilled fish, roasted vegetables, and his mom's famous cornbread. We sat out on the patio afterward, wrapped in blankets, drinking hot tea while the sky turned that soft kind of gold you only get in spring. His dad told me he was proud of me, just like that. No conditions, no but, no strings, and I swear I almost cried into my teacup. It's wild how a few words from the right people can start to stitch up wounds the wrong people left behind. I'm not healed, not completely. There are still days when a smell or a song will bring Lena's voice into my head. Still moments when I wonder what it would have felt like if she'd just chosen love over envy. But then I remember this. I didn't leave her. She left me a long time ago. I just finally stopped chasing. It's been a few months now. Things have settled at least on the outside. No surprise visits, no dramatic texts, no middle-of-the-night voicemails laced with guilt or fake concern. Just stillness. But stillness can be its own kind of storm. Some days I catch myself staring at the front door, half expecting someone to knock. My mom, maybe. Or Lena. And I've rehearsed the conversation 100 times what I'd say, how I'd keep my voice even, how I wouldn't let them pull me back in. But no one comes. And the truth is, I'm grateful for that. I heard from that same cousin again. She told me Jason finally moved out for good. Filed for divorce last month. No drama, no spectacle, just done. Like flipping a switch. Lena, from what I've been told, still walks around our parents' house like nothing happened. Mom pretends it's all fine. Dad says less and less. They act like if they ignore the fallout long enough, it'll disappear. But truth doesn't work like that. You can sweep it under the rug all you want, but it'll keep coming back. In cracks. In whispers. In the silence at family dinners when her name gets mentioned, and nobody meets anyone's eyes. I don't hate her. It'd be easier if I did, but I don't. I just don't recognize her anymore. And maybe that's the part that hurts most. That someone I loved so deeply could hurt me so completely and not even flinch. Noah and I, we're solid. He's been patient through all of it, my bad days, my silence, the nights I needed space, and the ones I needed him close. He never once told me to get over it. He just let me move at my own pace. One morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through old photos of us from college back when everything was new, when Lena was still my best friend, when I thought we'd grow old raising our kids side by side. He turned the page and looked up. "You still miss her?" I nodded. "Some version of her. And that's the thing, right? I don't miss the real Lena, not the one who sent my husband seductive texts the week of her wedding. Not the one who called me selfish for falling in love. Not the one who stood by while our mother called me names and made me feel like I was nothing. I miss the Lena I thought I had. The one I built in my mind. The one I wanted her to be. But she never existed. Not really. Noah and I planted a tree in our backyard last week. A little red maple. We dug the hole together. Didn't say much, just worked quietly, side by side. After we finished, I stood back and looked at it. This tiny thing, barely taller than my knee, its leaves bright like fire. "You think it'll make it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Depends on how we care for it." And something about that stuck with me, because love isn't about roots alone. It's about what you feed, what you water, what you choose to let grow. My family chose favoritism, control, silence. I'm choosing honesty, peace, room to breathe. I never sent a mass message, never made a big announcement about going no contact, no dramatic Facebook status or tell all text chain. I just stopped showing up, stopped answering, stopped giving pieces of myself to people who didn't know what to do with them, and slowly the noise faded. People who mattered stayed close. The rest faded like smoke. I kept a box of things from my old life photos, notes, gifts Lena gave me growing up. I found it in the back of a closet during a deep clean, sat on the floor, and went through it one last time. There was a necklace she gave me when I got into college. A little silver charm shaped like a star. "Because you're gonna shine one day," the card said, "even if no one sees it yet." I read that line over and over. Then I closed the box and tucked it away. Not in anger, but in acceptance. She was right about one thing. I did shine, just not in her sky. We had dinner with Noah's parents again last night. His mom made shepherd's pie and insisted I take leftovers. Like always. His dad told us about their plans to build a greenhouse in the spring. It was warm, easy, real. On the drive home, I rolled the window down. The air smelled like rain. Somewhere, far off, I heard an owl call, and I felt okay. Not over it, not healed all the way, but okay. Because sometimes, healing isn't about fixing everything, it's about learning to live with the cracks, letting light come through them, letting the wind pass through without fear. I used to think closure meant one final talk, some perfect moment where everything made sense and people apologized, and you gotta walk away clean. But now, I think closure is just this, choosing not to go back, and meaning it.